Hey everyone, as you've probably noticed, I've been playing a lot of State of Decay 2 lately, and I know I'm late to the party, it's an older game, but one thing that really stood out to me is when I tried to optimize my graphics settings, the online guides are severely lacking. Like, I couldn't even find a single web page, like in the first few pages of Google, that described what all the settings did, or do. So that was pretty frustrating. And then I found a YouTube vid. A guy was trying to explain it, but it seemed like he was also having a bit of trouble. So what I've done is I've gone and tested all the settings myself. And first off, I'm just going to describe what all the settings do for anyone like that was in my situation that literally just wanted to know what world level detail does. Um, yeah, there's no descriptions online. So basically, I'm going to run down all these settings and describe them just in words, and then I'm going to demonstrate them after the initial description, because someone like me might only want to know what the setting does so they can look for what to test, like where they want to test it in the game. They don't necessarily want to sit through while I go through each one and demonstrate it live. So a description might be enough for a lot of people, and then that'll stop you having to watch through the entire video. You might be fine within like 2 minutes, and you already get what you want out of the video, and you don't have to watch the whole thing. So anyway, world level detail. It's a really obscure setting. It doesn't actually affect objects. I thought this might affect the quality of detail in the game, but it doesn't. It affects really obscure objects like power lines, capacitors on power poles, of all things. And it's not really, even on low, it's not really something that will affect your immediate vicinity. Like when you go into a house, it's not going to affect the detail inside the house. It affects a power line like 500 meters away. And basically, ultra is max view distance. Like you can't even drive far enough, at least on this map, to get far enough away to make the power lines disappear. High, you can get fairly far enough. I can't exactly describe the exact distance because I'm going to demonstrate it later. But high is a good compromise, but the performance impact is minimal. So if you have a mid to high end setup, ultra is fine. You won't get pop in. If you have high, the pop in's there, but it's really far away, basically unnoticeable unless you're looking for it. And on medium, the pop in is very noticeable. Like you can see it like within your immediate field of view when you're just driving around. You'll see stuff popping in, especially on some maps that have a lot of capacitors on the power poles. You'll see these box things on the power poles, cylinders. You'll see them just popping in left and right. So that's where medium and low are really bad for that. But for the most part, it doesn't seem to greatly affect the world level of detail. Like I would have renamed this to distant object detail. Like, and it's not even distant objects. It's only specific objects. It's not like I can turn this to low and then the sign will these roadwork signs will disappear. It'll only be some really strange objects. So that's the main one that I actually had a lot of trouble with because I didn't know what it did and I had to investigate for myself. So hopefully that helps some of you out. I recommend Ultra because it doesn't really have an FPS hit anyway, but at least you know what it does. It doesn't affect the quality of the walls or the quality of the barrels or anything like that. It's not a quality setting. It's just a draw distance setting for weird things like power lines. Shadow quality is the overall density of the shadows, but also the draw distance. So Ultra is obviously the best. High is a good compromise. Medium is very noticeable, but it doesn't pop in the shadows. Like you don't lose the shadow for a tree because you've gone too far. It actually fades the shadow out. So you'll get fade in of shadows, much more noticeable on medium, but high and ultra high is a good compromise, and ultra is just if you've got a beast setup. And then low turns shadows off, which I don't recommend for immersion because even though there's a bit of a break in immersion in the way that the shadows move in this game, like they teleport with the time of the day, and it's kind of really jarring and annoying to see it happen. Like when you're under a tree and you see the tree shadows just teleporting like an inch at a time, it's kind of crappy. But what's worse is if you run low to turn those shadows off, outdoors looks good with no shadows because it just looks like a bright night, like the moon is out, whatever. But when you go into a house, it completely removes house shadows. And the problem with that is that there's a weird lighting effect in the houses that makes it seem like it's almost daytime inside all the houses when you turn this setting on to low. So especially at the actual daytime, you'll go into a house, it's like the sun is inside the house at all angles, all corners of the house has the sun in it. So it's really bad for that kind of immersion. I don't recommend it unless you've got a really low end setup. High would be my go-to setting, and medium if you really need the performance. It's still a decent setting to run medium rather than low. And then foliage, it's the thickness of the grass and the distance at which high resolution tree textures pop in. And what I mean by that is that at a certain distance, the tree detail lowers, and then the trees become skinnier, kind of like with tessellation. And then when you get close enough to them, they get thicker and they look fuller. So Ultra maxes this out. Obviously, you get the most grass, you get thick grass, and the distance is like, you're driving down a street, or you're on one side of the road, you can see grass on the other side of the road, basically on Ultra. But it's still not as far as I'd like. I would like a higher setting than this, like super mega Ultra. But that's the best you can get, obviously. High is a decent compromise if you need a few more FPS. This is a um, fairly large hit on performance. Same with shadows. Like shadows ultra to medium, you can get like 10 to 15 FPS, and it's around 10 FPS ultra to medium on foliage for your grass. But you get a lot more pop in at medium. That's the only thing. So you'll notice the grass rendering really close to you, and you'll also notice the trees changing the texture size. The thickness of the trees, you'll notice that changing really close to the character. And on low, it basically turns off the high quality trees and it turns off the grass. So low is actually good if you don't like seeing stuff change all the time, because if it's on low, it's just going to be always low quality when at most distances, right? But the thing is, it makes all the grass disappear, so you just get flat textures for the ground. So all the hills and stuff are just flat. So if you can handle that, run low, but I recommend actually running ultra if you can, just for immersion, because having nice thick full grass at the max view distance that it can allow is the best you can hope for, really. So I would run ultra if you can spare the FPS, and I'd sooner lower shadow quality to high, and keep foliage on ultra, because even on ultra with foliage, it still won't it will still be rendering um, fading in and out sooner than shadows on high. So as long as it's not shading, like if it's already fading out before the shadows on high, then you might as well have it on ultra to make it less apparent. So they're kind of like fading in and out together almost with ultra foliage and high shadows, and you still get a bit more of a performance boost. Like, and ultra shadows are a decent FPS hit, like you can see there, around 10 FPS just going there, and then you get like another 5 another 10 almost going into medium. So shadows are the most heavy one. Texture quality is a weird one. I know it's a bit of a console port, this game. It seems like they didn't even do anything with high and ultra. They've just put the option there for people to think that they're running ultra settings and high settings. But in reality, you have to really hunt for any difference with high and ultra. Like, you need a magnifying glass, basically. So what this is supposed to do is affect all the textures in the game, but high and ultra do not affect all the textures in the game. It's almost like an indiscernible, like if there's a street sign that has writing on it, this is what I would expect it to affect, like the writing goes down to lower quality, but that only happens between medium and low. So medium and ultra look virtually the same. Like, I can't find the difference between medium and ultra. Only with low, all the textures throughout the game, the cars, the paint on the car, all of the quality drops to look like an oil painting. And then when you put it to medium, all the detail comes back. So, and then if you go from low to ultra or low to medium, you'll see the same quality difference. So just as a quick example, I was going to go through these after. You can see that there. That's low. And see how it looks super bad, that texture, like these animations on the car. Yeah, and basically medium will bring all that quality back without having to go all the way up. So it saves VRAM. If you've got a lower end system and you don't have tons of VRAM, definitely try running medium. The only thing I'm unsure of, because it's a bit harder to test, is having a larger, like having your texture quality on ultra might give you more VRAM. Like, the game might load more textures into your VRAM, which would mean that it could affect pop-in in some situations. Like, you might have a house that's in low quality, and then it might not render straight away on medium. but I didn't notice that when testing medium. I just saw that the quality was back, and I didn't notice any low quality textures on medium either. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but for the most part, medium and ultra do look the same when you're trying to find the differences. But run ultra if you've got the VRAM because it doesn't hurt. It obviously has very minimal FPS hit. It's only for mid to lower end systems that you might have to worry about your VRAM usage, because running a higher setting, even if the difference in visuals is unnoticeable, the texture sizes may be larger in ultra. So then you're going to have more VRAMs and more textures swapping from your VRAM to your system memory that can cause more stutter. So run medium if you've got stutter, and low is the last resort. So that's that. And post-process quality is actually a really weird one. It doesn't. It appears to affect motion blur, which most people turn off, right? It affects the quality of motion blur, but motion blur by itself is already hard to discern quality differences, like even low and high. It's like the length of the blur, but you have to like take a screenshot to even notice it. And then, so it appears to affect that, and it also appears to affect maybe depth of field, which I honestly can't find. Like, it's hard for me to even notice depth of field changes. But someone said it affected ambient occlusion in one of the guides online. It does not. It tricks you into thinking it does. So if you're an ultra, it's actually almost virtually the same in post process going all the way down to medium, right? The big difference is going medium to low. So it's almost like console settings. Like they had a low, and then they had a medium, and then they didn't even do anything with high and ultra. But if you go to low, the trick is it looks like the whole game just got brighter, right? It's because this setting is tied in with your eyesight at nighttime. So the darker it is in the game, the darker the left and right sides of the screen become. And it adds like a vignette type of effect to the left and right side. So kind of like your eyes closing or having trouble seeing in the dark. So at nighttime, it's most apparent. And what people got tricked into thinking it's ambient occlusion is because they turn it to medium and the game gets darker, and they're like, oh, look, the wall has more darkness on it. That's not what's happening. It's actually an effect that is caused by the left side of the screen, or the right side of the screen. So just as an example, look at the house. See the brightness of the house? Now, as I slowly move the camera, you'll see the house getting darker on the left side of the screen. And as I move it back to the center of the camera, the house is bright again. So it's not actually an occlusion effect. It's an effect that darkens the sides of the screen, really subtle. So the left and the right sides of the screen will make stuff darker, and it makes your eyesight kind of tunnel vision down the middle of the screen. And so see that left side there when I'm zoomed in? See how the house is getting dark as I'm turning the camera? So the top left of the screen where the house is, or the right side of the screen. See that darkness? It's so hard to notice. But it makes you think, when you're in the settings menu and you change it, because it's on the left and right side, it makes you think the whole screen's getting brighter and darker. It's just, it's an edge effect in post-processing. So this actually lowers your image quality. It makes the game harder to see, especially at night. And it's supposed to be maybe an immersion effect, but being a third-person game, I wouldn't expect my camera to just get dark and make it harder to see on the left and the right sides and give me fisheye. It's basically giving you tunnel vision, and I can't stand it. If you run it on low, it's linear. Like, see, there's no more darkening on the left screen, no more darkening on the right. It's so much clearer and better, and so I recommend everyone turn it off. It's just a really bad setting. And yeah, if you turn it up to ultra, it's basically the same thing. It's like ultra and high don't have a significant difference. But see that darkness going over, even if you just look at the umbrella gets shadow on it. If I go to the middle, see the middle of the umbrella there on the edge of the screen? See how it's getting darker? Now it's bright. Dark, bright. So yeah, it's an annoying setting. I don't like it. I wish they described it better. They could have just called it edge shadowing or something, or vignette, whatever. They could have named it something else than post-process quality. But that's what's making your games look dark and blurry and hard to, basically, it makes it harder to see. So you turn that low. Effects quality is supposed to be what I would assume particle effects and explosions and things like that, or blood. I could not find a discernible difference between low, medium, high, and ultra. So I like stood at a fire changing it. I couldn't. The fire looked exactly the same on low. The particles, the embers coming off the fire looked the same. Yeah, I couldn't find a difference. I tried fireworks. I tried blood on zombies. I tried to see if the blood coming off the zombies was like more on ultra, like you get more blood splatter. It was basically the same. So I don't think this effect is, if it is doing something, it's so subtle that it doesn't matter, and there was no significant performance impact. Same with post process. There's no performance impact between these two. You could just run an ultra for the sake of it, but I couldn't see a difference. There might be a gun or some weapon with smoke coming off it, but I even tried the drop smoke from calling. See that smoke plume over there? I tried to see if it affects smoke plumes. It didn't. So I don't know why it would affect the barrel of a gun when it doesn't affect a airdrop smoke. So that's effects. I also tried lighting. If it affects lighting effects, it does not. I tried the headlights of a car to see if there was more beams coming off, more like, you know, when you put the high beam through a fence, if the fence like made more shadows or more light shafts, it didn't do anything. So I couldn't find out what that did really. You could just run it low, it wouldn't matter. Ambient occlusion is shadowing on objects low to the ground and houses. So see how there's like a darkness on the house? If I turn this to low, you'll see it disappear. So this is what you can see from the menu. But the main difference is ultra and high are virtually the same. High ultra is just a tiny shade darker, so you're getting a tiny bit more effect. But the bigger difference is going from high to medium, because smaller objects, like for example these pot plants and the shadows on the pot plant, if I can get this in the screen, that's what's affected by going between high. So you see on high, the pot plant has shadowing within itself, so on object shadowing basically, and then going to medium it loses the shadow that's inside the pot. There's still shadow there, like you can even see it, there's shadow there. It just, the effect, the ambient occlusion effect that goes around the whole rim of the pot is gone. And low turns it off altogether, so you lose it on the houses, all objects. But an interesting thing is that with your normal shadows on, you still have all your shadows. You do have shadows. It doesn't, like some games, ambient occlusion can really affect the image quality. For me, it doesn't have a significant impact when you take into account the performance gain is almost the same as turning shadows down to medium. So you can gain a good between 10 to 20 FPS just turning it down to low or medium. But if you want a good balance, like you really like those house shadows, put it to medium and see that shadowing along the edge. You'll get that back, and a little bit of shadowing on the wall too, which is nice. It does look good. But unless you're looking for it, it's not as big an impact as shadows, and maybe you need that FPS. And then you go up to high, and you can see that it just, on the wall, it just gets a little bit thicker. Ultra did nothing. It's almost like ultra and high are the same. It's just high, medium, and low that seem to make the biggest difference. And yeah, so high is for if you want your pot plants and things like that having more shadowing on them. See that nice shadowing inside the pot? It looks a little bit better. But if you look at the FPS, like if I just stand in a fixed position, I'm on 81 FPS. And then if I drop this down to medium, I've jumped from 81 to 94. So it's like a more than 10 FPS gain just from turning the object. So this pot doesn't have as much shadow on it. Like I don't think that matters because there's still realistic shadowing everywhere else. And on the house, which is more noticeable because it's much bigger, right? So yeah, I recommend medium if you want performance. And then anti-aliasing it depends on your in-game resolution. Same with texture quality. On lower resolutions, texture quality and anti-aliasing are actually more important for image quality. But from what I've found, even though all guides will say, oh, the FPS hit is minimal, just run it on ultra. From what I've found, even at 1440p, so it's not 4K, it's 1440p, medium is fine. And it can help with your FPS stability. Even though your average may look the same, your minimum FPS can improve from not running max anti-aliasing. But as you can see here, I'm not having noticeable jaggies, and this is on a 34-inch monitor, no less. Most people are running 27-inch if it's 1440p or lower, and I can't see any noticeable jagged edges from just running medium anti-aliasing. So you'd have to look really close, or maybe at daytime at certain fences. If you do have aliasing that you don't like, obviously turn it back up. But if you're having any issues with FPS drop, it doesn't hurt to have it on medium. On low, I did notice shimmering, and certain buildings, like the edge of the roofs, will have shimmering and jagged edges. Well, not really jagged edges, but they're jagged at a distance that causes shimmering. But I can't see the jagged edges because I'm so far away. It's just a weird line shimmering effect that usually happens when the anti-aliasing is turned down too much. But as you can see here, like, these still look great. It still looks pretty sharp. So, yeah. So there's that. But if you know, if you've got the headroom, it does make sense that a lot of sites just say to max it. It's just like for sake. It's more of an OCD. It's like I might as well max it because I can. And it doesn't significantly hit your FPS. But this game is known for having random FPS drops, so depending on your setup and your RAM, more specifically, like if you've got a low amount of system RAM, anti-aliasing and texture quality are going to place more load on the GPU and the VRAM. So having these turned down is obviously going to be less strain on them and going to help smooth out the performance a bit more. So as you can see here, I'm getting 0.1 and 1% around 6272, and that's with ultra. If I turn it down to medium, oh, we might even get lower drops based on the load, depending on the load of the card. Try again. Oh, that's interesting. I'm getting a lower 0.1 on lower setting. I guess that can happen on Navi cards. I've actually seen where lower load can actually cause more FPS drop. But which one did it? Problem is this isn't a good apples to apples test. Oh, there we go. So it wasn't the aliasing, it was the texture quality being a bit too low, maybe. Oh no, I still gotta see that was bad. That was bad spike. But keep in mind I am running with AMD ReLive recording at the same time. But yeah, basically, long story short, anti-aliasing, you don't always have to run an ultra. It can help smooth out FPS drop. Same with textures, depending on your setup and your system RAM, because not everyone's running 3000 megahertz 2x8 sticks. It's just hard to get an apples to apples proper test of those two settings, because even if I'm doing it at the same spot, the time of the day and the shadows are always moving. Oh, not this shadow, but these ones over here. See them moving? And that can make the difference between like a 0.1 at 70 and a 0.1 at 50, because the shadows have shifted over the, like, just a few inches to the left. But basically, it can alleviate stutter though. I know that for a fact because other games suffer from stutter with high VRAM usage. Anyway, that's basically it. I can demonstrate the bright indoors. It's pretty interesting. Even at nighttime, it makes it so easy to see. So you can see this. It's like super bright. And at daytime, it's even worse. Like it's really bright. It's nice for visibility. Like it's great visibility. But it is literally like there's an LED, like a dim LED illuminating everything in this room. Especially the floors. And at daytime, it's almost unbearable. Like the floor will be shining with like the light of the sun. And then just simply, if you can't run like high shadows, just simply having it on medium returns all the atmosphere back. So you have to use your torch. See that? So your torch is actually doing something. Okay, because that's, yeah, the shadows is tied to the indoor lighting. I don't know how they've done it, but having it on low, like, basically defeats the purpose of even having a torch. Like, it still changes, but you don't need it to see. Like, it still makes stuff brighter. But yeah, I can already see everything without it. Just brightens up this lower part here. But it's so much less immersive because, you know, you're going to walk in a room like this, you'll already see the zombie before you see its eyes glowing or anything. You'll just already see it standing there. And when you've got your shadows up, it's like just the immersion's better. The candlelight's nice. It's supposed to be hard to see when you've got no power. But personal preference too, like I actually played with shadows off for a while just because I liked that I could see better. And especially at daytime, I actually find the way that the shadows move of the trees with the time of the day, I find it really frustrating. And if you turn the shadows off, you can basically roleplay that it's a bright moonlit night, like even if the moon doesn't look that bright. You can just pretend like, oh, there's moonlight illuminating everything, and just ignore the fact that the shadows are gone. And it's actually much nicer. It's like it's easier to see and less annoying. And you know, you still get your shadow effects on stuff like your torch, your lighting effect. You still get lighting effects, I should say. That would be a better description. But you're not going to get shadows coming through like the fence. With your shadows on, you actually do, which is pretty nice. With your shadows on, you'll actually get oh wait, maybe not on medium. That's one more thing I just learned now. With shadows on high, you'll actually get proper filtering through objects of... Why is it not doing it? What if I turn down that's ruining it? Something is messing with. Maybe shadows have to be an ultra. I was getting shadows coming through this wall earlier. Could be a time of day thing. Sorry. You know the time of the day, how the tree's shadow is moving in a circle? If the tree shadow is to the right, then maybe it's not going to give me the shadow effect from this angle. Yeah, even on full ultra. I was actually getting all the bars of this fence. The shadows were projecting onto the garage, but it seems like it's dependent on the time of day, because this is back at full ultra and I'm not getting it anymore. Yeah, the time of day of the tree shadow basically. So if the tree shadow is all the way around here, over this side, or the moon shadow I should say, it probably won't do the effect until earlier in the, maybe at daytime. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that, guys, and you got a bit more of a description than what some of the online guides were showing you. If you want my optimized settings, I recommend leave that ultra, turn this to, this is for a mid to high end system, okay? If you're on a lower end system, obviously use medium. Even though medium has the quality drop, you'll get all your smoothness back, and that's more important. Medium still looks pretty decent anyway. But mid to high end, if you can spare the FPS, shadows high, foliage ultra, texture quality ultra, post-process, turn off that weird edge darkening. Effects, you can leave it on ultra, it doesn't do anything. Ambient occlusion, now this is the trade-off. If you have to choose between dropping your shadow quality lower or your foliage quality, or just simply losing a little bit of object shadowing, which is more subtle, because you don't look at pot plants all the time, I'd sooner get your FPS back dropping that. And then anti-aliasing, you can just leave it on ultra. It's a preference. And then if you're on a mid, so that's what I would run, and you can see that my FPS is up at, it's moving around, and it's kind of not a good time to not a good time of the day to test, but it averages around 90 to 100, depending on time of day and where I am on the map. You can see for 1440p, that's already pretty nice. If I wanted a few more FPS and I didn't mind the render distance, dropping foliage to high actually can help get it into consistent close to 100. and you still get your grass. It's still pretty thick. It's just that that draw distance is a bit more noticeable. If I get in the car and turn the headlight on. So see the grass on the side of the road. It's drawing in right in front of me. Okay, so it's pretty bad even on high, but that's where you can also gain a few more FPS. If your goal is like 100 FPS, then obviously shadows maybe even medium, but it's shadows and ambient occlusion. They're the two big ones, and foliage. But foliage, to me, I don't like lowering that because it already looks bad at high. Like the I mean, it's a thing. Like if you really need the performance, like on medium, it's rendering it at my feet almost, like in front of the car directly. It's so noticeable. If I had a low spec machine, I would sooner just turn it off altogether rather than have this grass rendering as I'm walking. Like, just turn it on low and don't worry about grass. Who cares, you know? Because you need performance if you're on a low spec machine, and at least you're not going to have this weird grass effect. It's growing as you walk. But I mean, if you like it, have it on medium. But it's just my recommendation is ultra high for mid to high end, and then high for mid end, mid range, and then just lower something else. I would sooner turn that off altogether actually than have the foliage too low if you need more FPS. Because you don't even need the building shadowing, because it's kind of unrealistic at certain times of the day, because there shouldn't be shadows like all around the windowsills and stuff when the sun's on it. And you still get darkness. Like if I turn this ambient occlusion off, the house is still dark at night, but I'm gaining a lot of FPS. But I did turn, what did I turn back up? Oh, I didn't turn anything back up. It's just the angle that I was looking at the house. So you can see different angles drop the FPS a lot. But yeah, if you were wondering about effects quality, it's just weird. It doesn't seem to affect the effects. That's on low. It still looks great. Like, as great as it does on ultra anyway. And yeah, headlights still work. I even looked at like the brake lights to see if affected the brake lights. It doesn't. It's just a weird setting. Similar to the world level of detail, how world level of detail does barely anything. It's kind of like that, and it doesn't seem to have a significant FPS hit that I could distinguish. There is an FPS drop when you change settings, but it doesn't mean that the FPS is running much lower. If in doubt, I would run medium or high just because it doesn't seem to matter. And if there is a big difference that it's making somewhere, that difference is going to be between medium and low. So as long as you have it on at least medium, you're still going to get the effect if it's taking something away. And then you might actually notice it popping into the game, or you might notice a degradation in effects quality by keeping it on medium. But on low, you won't notice because it'll probably turn it off. So because this setting is still in doubt, I would recommend medium or higher, just to make sure that you have the effect that it's taking away. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you appreciate the video. If there's anything else you want to know or any tests you want me to run, just hit me up in the comments and I will get onto it. Because obviously with this lockdown around the world, I've got lots of time on my hands. And yeah, so you can see this is my recommended settings basically. This one kind of doesn't matter, but ambient occlusion I reckon medium or low, and foliage quality ultra, shadow quality high. That'll get pretty consistent between 60 to 100 without severe FPS drop, basically. So you know you can basically play the game and like as an example. I'll just quickly drive this car around really quick and hit some zombies. And if your settings are too high for your system, you'll get noticeable stutter and FPS drop almost all the time whenever you do stuff that's dynamic. So like this, for example. There was some stutter when hitting stuff there. So you saw that FPS drop, but see how the game remains smooth, even though the stutter and the FPS drop is there. It's not bringing my game to a crawl, even though you're seeing frame time spikes and FPS drop. It's far more playable, and it's not actually affecting my input latency or anything like that. Like, I'm able to control the car and see what I'm doing and move the camera without having lag, basically, that comes with low FPS. So don't worry about 0.1%. It's more the minimum, the 1% that really affect your gameplay. If your minimum and 1% are dropping into the 50s and 40s, you'll definitely feel it. Or below 50, you'll start to feel like input latency where your mouse won't move properly, smoothly, or you'll just literally see stutter on your screen. You'll see something like that slight a split-second pause that makes a game feel like it's not running properly. But as you can see here, I'm testing with the car. There was a 0.1, but that's unnoticeable. Like, that's just the minimum of the minimum of the minimums. The 1% though is staying above 60. And the average is at 91. Not the best time of the day to test again, but I do get similar FPS at daytime. It's still around the 90 to 100. And then if I run full ultra, so just remember, I was in the 90s, and then I had my 1% loads were staying above 60. Now if I run full ultra, and I try to look for some zombies, you can see my 1% has already dipped under 60. It just dropped down to, it was at 29, it's climbing back up. But even see my minimum, it's under 60 now. So that's in the realm of if it was at a little bit more built up area, I would already be getting noticeable, like, it would be affecting my gameplay to some degree. Although, to be honest, I can't feel it even at these settings, but this is on my system. So on other systems, you might be on the verge of smooth gameplay at ultra, and then you might just want to know what to tweak to get it more playable and eliminate like a tiny bit of stutter. If you have low FPS all the time, that means you've got to turn all your settings down. Like, you're not just hunting for one setting. You've literally got to turn down your shadow quality, turn down ambient occlusion. It means your FPS average is way too low. So you want to bring your average up. So shadow quality, ambient occlusion, maybe foliage to get your FPS up. If you're driving around and you just suddenly get like a giant FPS spike that stutters your game, that is usually not because your settings are too high. It's because of your VRAM being usage combined with the speed of your system RAM. So when the game has to load textures, if your VRAM usage is too high, it has to swap textures from your system RAM. If your system RAM is a low speed, or if you're only running a single stick, like one 16 gig stick is only half of the available speed, like transfer speed, of two sticks. So two 8 gig sticks is going to be double the transfer speed of one 16 gig stick. So that's called single versus dual channel. So if your VRAM usage is high, your settings that affect VRAM usage, namely the texture quality, I think the shadow quality and the ambient occlusion, and the anti-aliasing to some degree. If your texture quality mainly is too high and your VRAM usage is too high, and your system can't swap textures quick enough based on your RAM configuration, then you'll get that very noticeable stutter. The other cause of stutter that really noticeable lag spikes in your game, unless you're playing online, of course, is if your chipset drivers are missing or if something's overheating. Usually GPU drivers aren't the main cause. They can be, but then you have to try a different driver. But I've been running like with both NVIDIA and AMD GPUs. I don't even do clean installs. I just install over the top of the old one. The only time I did a clean install was when I upgraded from NVIDIA to AMD. That's when I wiped all the drivers with DDU, an application called Direct Driver Uninstaller, which completely clears out all the NVIDIA drivers in safe mode. But for the most part, I've gone from like version 19 AMD drivers, Adrenaline, to 2020, to 20.2, to 20.3, and I never did clean install or reset. I just installed over the top. and it's been running fine. So I don't know what is it with, like, it seems to be a common thing with troubleshooting. People say, did you clean install your drivers because your game's not running properly? But unless they've upgraded their GPU, I actually don't think installing over the top and not doing a clean install matters. It doesn't seem, at least it doesn't for me, and that's through multiple upgrades and different graphics cards. Like on the NVIDIA, I did the same thing. I just installed over the top, and I never fixed a problem that was caused by the drivers needing reinstalling, with like a clean install. The only time the drivers were an issue was when the literal driver version had a problem with one of the games I was playing. I think it was Borderlands 3, and the driver was just bugged with that game, and reinstalling them didn't do anything. It needed a driver fix. So rolling back the drivers like 4 versions eliminated the problem, but then the performance was a bit low, and then they released a fix, and that fixed the problem in the game, the stutter in the game. But yeah, just sharing that because yeah, it's good. The more you know, right? Like some people might also think, oh, do I have to? It's a driver update. I have to clean install again. I've got a DDU. All your driver settings when you do a clean install get wiped, and I hate that. I've been using the same driver settings from version 19 to version 2020. I wasn't able to copy my profiles over for my overclocking, my undervolt. So I had to manually re-enter these settings that you can see here, 965, 1750, blah, blah, blah. But apart from going from version 19 to 20, all I had to do was re-enter my settings manually because I remembered what they were. And so I put in my version 19 settings to my 20 settings, but between all the 2020 updates, because they had 20.0.1 or whatever it was, all the way up to 20.3.1, I upgraded every time they released a new driver. I never did a clean install. I just would install the new driver over the top of my existing driver. Like I would just do the update, and I wouldn't choose to. Oh look, there's a new one. So yeah, I'd download it, I'd install it. If it had an option to clean install, I never did that. And then I would manually go into tuning, and I would reload my old profile. So this is my stable profile that I know works. And the interesting thing is, like I'm on a bit of a rant here. This has nothing to do with State of Decay 2. This is just to do with driver stability and stuff. The interesting thing is, I noticed with the AMD drivers, between every version, they mess with the voltages because they're trying to make it stable for all people. And there's people like obviously reporting on forums, my RX5700 is not stable. It's something to do with the base frequencies and the stepping. You know how there's 3 steps. Something to do with this that they're messing with. They're trying to make it as stable as possible for all people. But the thing is, everyone's setup's different, and I think by messing with this, even if they get the voltage right, the voltage can increase the temps. So if they bump the voltage to increase stability for people with voltage problems, low voltage, they're then causing a set of issues with people with high temps. So if they lower the voltage to reduce the temps, then they cause voltage problems with people that were on the verge, because every GPU chip is different. So what I did was I just created my own profile, I stability tested, I had issues with black screens, flickering, all sorts of stuff that people are reporting online, like they're having issues with their AMD graphics cards. And all I did was I bumped these voltages because I was having issues at idle, like just at the desktop. My screen would go black and I couldn't see. I had to turn the monitor on and off. And it was really obvious there was something wrong with the idle voltages. Or there was something wrong with PCI 4.0 and 3.0, having your PCI BIOS to auto. I manually set my BIOS to PCI 3 mode because these cards do support PCI 4. So what if the GPU was trying to go to 4 mode somehow, a driver bug, and it can't do it, so it causes a black screen. But one thing I noticed is that after manually tweaking my voltages and carrying these settings over every driver update, I never got black screens again, and I didn't get driver crashes. Okay, so then when I install a new driver, like for example, how I'm updating now to 20.4, literally I'm not going to do the clean install setting. I'm just going to install over the top like a normal install. I can't do it while I'm recording, but I'll do a normal install, and then as soon as it's installed, I go into performance tuning and reload my safe settings, because these settings get changed by the drivers when you update them. So I reload my safe settings, and the one time I forgot to reload it, I had a black screen within the same day because I was running the default settings that AMD were providing to people. So I'm not saying that this is an issue with all AMD cards, but I'm just saying loading my own profile has stopped me from having issues. So if you're having issues with stutter and all sorts of performance things, or black screens or flickering, try tuning your own graphics profile. And the best way to start is you have it on automatic. You hit undervolt GPU. It'll get you a baseline voltage that is as low as possible, basically. And then from there, if you're getting stability issues at idle, add 50 MV, like 10 to between 10 and 50 MV add to the minimum and to the middle voltage. And by doing that, and maybe set a custom fan profile like you can see mine, but by doing that, you'll improve the stability at desktop. If your temps happen to be high at desktop, the fan profile will get that under control, having a better fan profile, because the stock fan profiles will let the card run hot. And I noticed stability issues as soon as the either the hotspot or the VRM, like you can't really see it here properly. There's not good enough temp monitoring in their driver, but over here, the VRM getting into the 70s was giving me instability issues, as well as the VRAM getting into the close to 90. I would already have like games showing artifacts and weird stuff, even though the core temp was fine and the hotspot is supposed to be able to go up to 110 or something like that. But I just noticed when I worked on my voltages and got all the temps down, my stability has been much better, and having a custom fan profile. So this could carry over to any GPU though. I mean, even with NVIDIA, you can have temperature issues and stability issues from having your memory overclocked or something. So having a custom fan profile for me is a staple with any graphics card, because one thing you have to know is that the default fan profiles are made for low noise, and they are not tuned per country. They're tuned for basically where the cards are built, and usually they're tuned in a temperature controlled environment to give you a specific curve that is like a balance of keeping just cool enough but keeping the noise as low as possible, while most users want their cards to last as long as possible and to perform good. So to perform good, low temps should be the priority, not noise. So if you tune it more for performance, you might get a little bit more fan noise, but your card will run better. The boost will be more stable. You won't have like your boost clock dropping down to 1500 and 1700 when it's under high load, but that will happen when you've got higher temps, because the boost clock will lower to and the voltage will lower to avoid pushing high temps. It's actually built into the BIOS of the cards, not driver controlled. There's like a baseline underlying BIOS level where it will adjust itself to stop itself overheating, and that's where you get performance issues too. So yeah, sorry about that rant, guys. It was just a free rant at the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching if you stayed this long. And yeah, I might do more guides in the future. Just really bugged me. I was searching for ages trying to find out what world level detail did and what effects did, and there was just nothing. It was just really vague descriptions, and even on Reddit there was someone that asked what does world level detail do, and then someone said, what do you mean? Like, because you think it's self-explanatory, but it's not. Like, see the arms and stuff there? Like, I can turn this to low. It doesn't change anything. Everything is still in the game. I'm not losing textures or lower quality. Like, see, you'd assume that low world level detail would like make the cups and that umbrella some textures there. It would make them disappear. Not a power line 100 meters away, which you can literally see has disappeared now that I've got it on low.
Am I the only one who feels like we're seeing more and more infestations around here?
High will bring it back. There they are. Just the weirdest thing. It's nothing to do with something you can see immediately on screen. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you in future gameplay, because I'm going to be playing this game for a bit. I'm planning to go into Wolcen. I might do a bit more Call of Duty Warzone, although that got old pretty quick. Like, I basically power leveled my guy and it got boring because I don't have any good squads to play with. But yeah, if there's a game you want me to check out, let me know too, because I'm up for diagnosing performance issues in games. I find it's like meditation. Okay, see you later, guys. Thanks.